Everyone lives connected. Messages, notifications, people talking at all hours. And still, more and more studies are pointing to the same thing. People are lonelier than ever. But there's something strange happening on the other side of that. Some people aren't lonely. They made a decision. They looked at their phone, saw a name on the screen, and chose something simple. Not today. Maybe not ever again. And the strangest part? They've never felt more at peace, so when does that shift happen? And what actually causes it? Most of them didn't start out that way. There was a time when you were the person everyone leaned on, the friend who picked up at any hour, the one who listened for hours, who tried to keep the peace while everyone else dove into conflict. You were the person they called when things got hard, and almost every time your answer was yes. Not because you didn't have limits, but because somewhere along the way, you learned that being needed felt safer than being overlooked. You spent years listening to the same circular dramas, giving the same advice that was rarely acted on, watching nothing change, and showing up again anyway. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from that. Not the tiredness that sleep fixes, the kind that builds slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you've been running on borrowed energy for longer than you can remember. And the hardest part is that nobody around you noticed, because you were so good at making it look effortless. Until one day, something small happened. Your phone rang, you saw who was calling, and for the first time, you decided not to answer. And something unexpected followed. The world didn't stop. Chaos didn't break loose. Nothing. Just quiet. That moment wasn't weakness. Your brain was doing exactly what it's built to do: keep you safe. A researcher named Stephen Porges explains that our nervous system doesn't operate in just one mode. It has several. One is built for social connection, the mode we use when we feel safe with the people around us. But there's another that surfaces when the system detects too much depletion, too much emotional stress, too much energy given without being replenished. When that happens, your nervous system shifts strategy. It reduces contact, seeks withdrawal, conserves energy, not because something is wrong with you, but because your organism has decided it needs to protect its most limited resource. And emotional energy is exactly that. You can't see it depleting the way you'd see a gas tank emptying, but your body knows. It always knows before your mind is willing to admit it. And sometimes the most honest thing your body can do is simply stop responding to what's been draining it. But there's another question underneath all of this. Where did your nervous system learn that certain relationships could be a threat to your well-being? For many people, the answer starts long before adulthood. It starts in childhood. Maybe you grew up in an environment where you were constantly reading the room just to survive emotionally. You watched the moods of the adults around you. You noticed when something was about to shift. Did you know when it was better to go quiet? When it was wiser to simply disappear? You learned to make yourself small, not because you were small, but because it was the safest thing to do. And you got so good at it that eventually it stopped feeling like a choice. It just felt like who you were. Psychiatrist Murray Bowen described this with a concept he called emotional cutoff, a pattern that forms when someone learns, very early on, that emotional closeness can come loaded with tension or unpredictable behavior. So the brain develops an adaptation. Keep a safe distance, don't depend too much, don't expose yourself too much. What started as protection when you were small can become a pattern that follows you for years. And the tricky part is that it keeps working. So you keep using it, even when the original danger is long gone. The challenge isn't unlearning the pattern. It's learning to tell the difference between a situation that genuinely requires it and one that doesn't. But not all pulling away is the same. There's a real difference between protecting yourself and building walls that permanently seal you off. One is a boundary, the other is a prison you built yourself. Research shows that prolonged isolation can affect physical well-being. But something that rarely gets mentioned, being surrounded by the wrong people can be just as damaging, or more. Loneliness in a crowd is its own particular kind of pain. The kind that makes you feel invisible, even when you're standing right in front of someone. And that kind of loneliness is especially exhausting because from the outside, everything looks fine. So the question that actually matters isn't whether you should let people in. It's which people deserve to be there. There's something interesting about people who eventually distance themselves from certain relationships. They rarely do it randomly. Over time, they become very good at recognizing patterns. The friend who only shows up when they need something. The family member who mixes affection with criticism. The person who enters your life with intensity and then vanishes completely. Your mind starts recognizing the cycles, the promises that repeat, the behaviors that always circle back to the same point. And when you've seen the same pattern enough times, you stop doubting yourself and start trusting what your own eyes are showing you. That's not cynicism, that's clarity earned through experience. Some recent research has found something that helps explain this. People who experienced high levels of emotional stress early in life tend to develop a sharper sensitivity to social signals. The brain becomes especially attuned to small shifts in the behavior of those around them. This isn't paranoia, it's accumulated experience. Your mind has spent years observing, comparing, learning, until it built something like an internal warning system. So when that system signals that a relationship is going to drain you, many people eventually learn to listen. And more importantly, they learn to trust that signal even when everyone around them says they're overreacting. Our society tends to use words like antisocial or isolated to describe people who step back. But those words assume something that isn't always true, that everyone should always want more connection, more people, more interaction. There's another experience that's equally valid and far more healing, the quiet of solitude that's been consciously chosen. Not the loneliness that hollows you out, but the stillness of a space where your mind can finally rest. The phone rings less. The conflicts that were never yours to carry are just gone. The emotional noise fades. And in that silence, many people find something they didn't expect: peace. Not the temporary kind that comes after a fight finally ends. The deep, settled kind that comes from no longer fighting battles that were never yours to begin with. People who haven't been through this process will often read your behavior as running away. But most of the time, it's the opposite. You're not running away from others. You're moving toward yourself, toward a quieter way of living, toward relationships built on genuine honesty, toward a version of yourself that no longer has to run on empty, holding everything together. There's a difference between isolation and intention, between shutting the world out and choosing who gets in. And that difference changes everything about how you experience your own life. And if you've ever asked yourself whether something is wrong with you for needing to pull away from certain people, hear this: you are not cold. You are not someone who lost the ability to care. You are not a person without feeling. You are someone who learned one of the most valuable lessons of human existence. Not everyone who crosses your path deserves access to your energy. Protecting your peace doesn't mean you've given up on people. It means you've finally started taking yourself seriously. And deciding to protect your peace is one of the most quietly courageous choices a person can make. Harvard University has been conducting a study on human happiness for over 70 years. One of its conclusions is surprisingly simple. It's not the number of people in your life that determines your well-being, it's the quality of those relationships. So if your circle is small, but made up of people who genuinely respect you and show up when it counts, you're not making a mistake. You're doing the right thing for yourself. How many of these patterns did you recognize in yourself? Drop it in the comments. Not just a number, tell me which part hit closest to home. If this video put into words something you've never been able to express, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and leave a like. There's more coming. See you next time.